Don't sleep on the newest innovations in wellness, or maybe do. Introducing Force Factor's Somnipure. Only at the Vitamin Shoppe, the new Somnipure line of drug-free sleep aids includes a muscle recovery formula to help you relieve sore muscles and improve sleep quality. Plus, for the first time ever at the Vitamin Shoppe, an easy-to-drink, fast-acting liquid solution with melatonin and natural botanicals to help you fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and wake up feeling refreshed. Sleep stronger with Somnipure at vitaminshoppe.com or the Vitamin Shoppe store near you.
It's the biggest March ever. Big premieres, big families, and big surprises. This month on Disney Plus, stream blockbusters like West Side Story, Free Guy, and Disney's Encanto, as well as original movies and series like Olivia Rodrigo Driving Home to You, Cheaper by the Dozen, Pixar's Turning Red, and Marvel Studios' Moon Knight. All of these and more streaming this month on Disney Plus.
Hey folks, welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Mason. You'll notice today we're posting on Tuesday, and that's because, in all honesty, my weekends are so busy now with just all kinds of stuff, and they're going to continue to be for the foreseeable future, so I think we should just probably get used to Tuesday uploads because I usually work on the show on the weekend and post it on Monday, but I just can't do that right now, so I'm going to work on it when I can. But Tuesdays, we're going to do Tuesdays and Thursdays for now. But nonetheless, 2 episodes will be coming out every week. But today we're talking to Paul Dreyer from Avid4 Adventure. You probably heard Avid4 Adventure advertised last week on the show. They are basically like a summer camp for adventure sports for kids. And we're talking to Paul Dreyer, the CEO, the Chief Engagement Officer, as he calls himself. And they need 800 people to work this summer, 800 job openings for summer applications. You don't have to be a college student. You can be retired, maybe teachers even if you have the summer off. Anyone that has that ability and wants to help impact the next generation of adventure athletes and outdoor adventurers, apply in the show notes. There's a link. We're going to, Paul is such a cool person. He's been working there almost 20 years now. So I think you're going to learn a lot from him. You're going to walk away with some hope for the next generation of adventurers. But again, if you know anybody or if you think of anyone that might want to work and do this for the summer, definitely connect with them. Well, folks, welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast. Today's not an update necessarily, but it is a guest who has been on the show before, Paul Dreyer. You have had some changes in what you're doing at Avid4 Adventure since we last talked. Before, I think you were like doing risk management or something, but now you're the CEO at Avid4 Adventure. Is that correct?
That is correct, and really, it was a change, but more just an addition. I'm just wearing a couple of additional hats from several years back.
Okay, all right. I feel like a lot of CEOs, it is just, hey, I just do a lot. I don't even know. Like it's just I keep adding on to what I do. It's not necessarily some massive change when they get to that point. Holy cow! Well, welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast.
Pleasure to be here, Mason. Excited to spend time with you and all your listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So Paul, I know I usually start with this. Where are you coming from, and where did you grow up? So let's start with that, then I'll get into some questions.
All right, I am calling in from original traditional lands of the Ute, Arapaho, and Cheyenne people. What's called Lyons, Colorado, right now, which is just north of Boulder, Colorado. That's where I'm calling from. And I grew up on the East Coast of the U.S. And fun fact about me is I was actually born in South Africa. So I lived the first few years of my life before moving to Boston area as a young child. But I've been Colorado based for 25 years now or so.
Wow. What was the what caused the move from South Africa to Boston?
That's a whole nother podcast.
Okay,
in brief, Mason, really my family, my parents were born and raised there, but never really wanted to stay in a country with the apartheid regime, and really even post-apartheid, just saw the writing on the wall of like really dangerous place to raise family there. So always wanted to move somewhere else, and the time it was just right when my brother and I were young children.
Wow. And so, going from there to the Boston area, you say, what eventually led you out west? And what did you grow up doing? I know you've talked about in our last show that you were into ball sports and traditional team sports, but when did, I guess, adventure start calling you?
Yeah, I was always an active kid and an active teenager, but I always think of it, and my guess is this can resonate with a lot of your listeners, Mason, who have spent any time in New England. But I grew up in this very, very stereotypical New England environment, which for me that means, in a way, it's a buzz phrase, but it's keeping up with the Joneses, right? It's about doing things to please others. It's about moving fast. It's about going to a good college, getting good grades, getting a good job so you can make a bunch of money and buy a house that's bigger than your neighbors. And that's like, that was my childhood. It was all like on a railroad track, like leading down that very traditional New England stereotypical environment. So, I played the traditional sports like in New England, like soccer and lacrosse, and I went to a traditionally good undergrad college and got a business degree there. And adventure was not on my radar at all until after my undergrad degree, after that business degree. My first job in the world continued along that track, that railroad track. I worked at a big corporate bank and being a financial analyst. And I did that for 1 year. So I guess I was probably about 22 years old at that point, 23 years old. And at that point, I realized just how much my soul was being sucked away from me, and within 1 year in corporate America. And that's when I moved west to Utah to be a ski bum. And my goal was to spend one season, one winter skiing, and then jump back into the corporate world, because that's what I knew. But that changed, that inflection point as a 22, 23-year-old, that just fully brought me into the world of adventure, the world of outdoor education, adventure education. And that started my second life. And that was about 25 years ago now.
What, after being a ski bum for a year, what did you start to think like, okay, this might not be as fulfilling, or maybe this did exactly what it needed to for the time. What am I doing now? How did you even start looking?
Well, what happened with me? So I remember very clearly the very last day that I walked out of that corporate bank in my suit that I used to wear every day to work. I promised myself a couple things that last day I walked out of the bank. And one of the things I promised myself is that for the rest of my professional life, any day that I work, like truly, like every single day of my professional life, that I would do something that, one, I just personally believed in. Like I believed in the mission of what that is. So there was like personal belief, and that it was like personally something that I enjoyed, that had fun doing. And so that was this promise. And like literally like 2 weeks later, I showed up as a ski bum in Alta, Utah. And immediately I started doing these outdoor things. I started not only skiing, but backcountry skiing and mountain biking and rock climbing and paddling. And I saw the change that was happening with me, with pushing myself and taking the risks in those sports. And so I just like saw the mission and believed in how powerful it was for me. And fundamentally, I was just having a ton of fun. So, as it approached the end of that first season, I hearkened back to my promise that professionally, I wanted to do something that I personally believed in and personally had fun with. And I was like, well, like what kind of jobs can I do doing all these outdoor stuff, right? And that's what really led me down the path to get a first and then second and then 150th job in the outdoor world.
So sounds like it did follow kind of those trajectories of like jumping from job to job.
For sure.
That quest, how long did that quest take before you landed at Avid4 Adventure? Because you've been there 19 years. So It sounds like the timeline was, I don't know, 5 or 6 years of searching.
I think it's my story, like most people's stories, Mason, is not a straight line. It was a lot of like circling back. So it was interesting. I would say there was, over a decade where what I really wanted to do and what I truly found value in for my story and for my experience in the outdoor world was this real like breadth of experience. So I worked for it was probably 30 or 35 different organizations and schools and companies, universities, varying different programs. Just like I love just taking contract work and mostly living out of my car for a decade and mostly taking just a ton of field work, both domestically and all over the world. And in that process, in that first 10 years, part of the reason why I wanted to work for a bunch of different organizations is to find a few that I could really not only get breadth, but depth of connection with. And so in that first decade of work, there were a couple of organizations, Avid4 Adventure being one of them, NOLS being another organization called Where There Be Dragons being a third organization. And those were organizations that I still have relationships now, almost 20 years later with all three of those organizations. In those, as I was still working and taking contract work with several different organizations, Avid4 Adventure, for example, I wasn't working full time there, but I have consistently been around the table, putting on different hats and taking on different roles ever since we started 18 years ago. So does that make sense that there was like an overlap of like when I was still working for a lot of organizations, but deepening relationships with a few?
So, coming from a family that had done a lot to escape a place that maybe they didn't feel was the best place to be, and coming from an area like New England, what was some of the reaction by your community, whether it was your friends or your immediate family? What was like the view of how Paul was living his life and doing this?
I think this is likely a common story with some of your listeners as well, that for a long time, the view and the reaction was like some version of these two things. One is, what the heck is Paul doing? I just truly don't understand it.
Right.
I don't have the data
And I'm sure you didn't
so
either.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I was making it up as I went along. So I think that is thing one of reaction. And I think thing two, that's a pretty common story, is the reaction was like, well, Paul will do this for a little while until he gets a real job. That they're, some version of sowing wild oats or something like that, of just getting this out of your system. It goes back to thing one of people just not understanding that this is a possible pathway for someone's true life passion and life professional work.
Was there an early experience or, gosh, I don't know, a day you talked about those promises you made yourself, but was there an experience you think back on and say that was a pivotal moment, or that was a day that I said, yes, I'm on the right track? Because, we all have those where it's like, we're unsure, and then we can look back on this, sometimes, this moment of saying that was confirmation almost, or validation that I'm going the right path for my life.
Wow, that's a great question. I think there have been multiple days and moments where I have felt that. And I'll tell you more about that in a sec. But I do think it's important to know that there have been multiple moments, including current moments, where there's doubt that comes in as well. So I really don't think there was a moment where like, all right, sweet, done, I'm headed on the right track, I don't need to worry about this. I think it's really healthy, actually, to have continued moments of doubts and continued moment of, wow, this feels like the most natural thing in the world. Of course, this is what I'm supposed to be doing in my life. And so, that's thing one of I think really important for us to remind that 100% certainty is actually probably not what we want, right? Those doubts help drive us forward and help make positive changes, even along the same path, but maybe just going down a different route for a little while. And then in terms of those moments that have been the inspirational, yes, I'm on the right track moments, there's so many that actually fire into my brain to come to mind, and they all have one commonality. It's when there's true human connection, where I'm working on a work project, or I was on a backpacking trip with a group of 10 others, or on a river trip or a climbing trip, where somehow there's this really deeper human connection, where either I'm able to help someone else guide them through something, or someone else is able to help guide me through something. But something about connection piece that really, lands with me. Okay, great. This is the moment, and this is the right place I'm supposed to be, and I'm on the right path.
Wow, you really the answer.
Did I go too deep?
No, that's so interesting that you say those moments of doubts, because I don't know, we're often taught that or at least, social media and stuff and societal expectations that like, okay, you figured this out, this is what you do. But even when you're on this very amazing path that you've worked really hard to get to, it's okay to still have moments of doubt. I'm sure over 19 years, been working with other organizations like NOLS that long, you've probably had times it's like, what am I doing?
Yeah, it's a great thing to think about, and it's just for me, it's interesting. You introduced me at the top of the show as the CEO of Avid4 Adventure. Internally, that title means a lot of things, and it's usually Chief Executive Officer. But my title at Avid is Chief Empowerment Officer. And that those moments of doubts, I feel like that's really one way that I empower myself and role model to others. Of that, we have to remain humble. That we have to keep asking the question: am I doing the right thing for others and for myself? And that drives positive change in ourselves and others.
That's awesome. And I know you do that primarily through Avid4 Adventure, which is just quite, I don't know. Yeah, I want to hear about the changes that have happened since you've started, but can you tell us just like, what is it? And I know you talked about this 6 years ago, but I don't know, has anything changed about like who you are and what you do and your mission 6 years later from when we talked to you last?
The mission has remained the same from 6 years ago and from when we were founded in 2004. So mission is unchanged. Avid4 Adventure is on the mission to help empower kids to choose active and healthy lifestyles in the outdoors. And our medium of how we do that also hasn't changed. Our medium is primarily summer camps and getting kids out into summer camps, either day programs, resident sleepaway camps, or expedition camping trips, getting them out away from screens and hiking, rock climbing, mountain biking, paddling, camping, all those things in the outdoors. All of that has stayed the same. The big change, Mason, is we're just doing that a whole lot more. We have, as an organization, ever since 2004, we have grown every year, except for 2020 for obvious reasons. And so over the past 6 years, we've grown quite a bit, and we're now we started just in Colorado. 6 years ago, we were running programs just in Colorado and California, and now we're running programs in 8 states, and we'll serve probably over 20,000 kids this summer. We'll hire over 800 seasonal staff to help support all of those locations of camps and across all those states. So just that's the biggest change. We're just doing it a whole lot more, which we're all really proud of.
Always a bigger need. So let's say 19 years ago, what were those stats? 20,000 kids this summer. What was it? What were you doing back then?
Oh, in year one, 2004, year one was maybe 50 kids just in Boulder, Colorado. And actually, one thing that I would say, also add in terms of something that's remained unchanged, or perhaps has just gotten worse. In 2004, when we started, the reason why we set a mission of empowering kids to be active and healthy in the outdoors is to really curb increasing rates, which we first started seeing these increasing rates in 2004, increasing rates of childhood diabetes and childhood obesity and increasing screen time in kids. Like, obviously that's a common story now, but in 2004, in the early 2000s, when we first started seeing those things. And Avid4 Adventure is on a mission to really curb those rates, turn them around. And, unfortunately, those rates have only increased in our 18-year history.
I was going to say, how has that changed? And with the onset of screens, I mean, I know we're both looking at a screen right now. It's totally unavoidable. And I know you mentioned, before you aren't Luddites, you aren't anti-technology, but it's important to have that time away. You've only seen an increase, huh? So the need has only grown. Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible.
One of the most formative things I did in my outdoor/adventure career was to be a camp counselor. So a couple summers in college, I helped kids learn how to mountain bike, to climb, to paddle, canoe, all kinds of stuff. And it was one of the coolest experiences and gave me a lifelong love of sharing these sports with people. And it honestly directly led to me hosting this podcast. And why that excites me so much is because Avid4 Adventure reached out to us and said, hey, we have hundreds of summer camp counseling jobs, seasonal jobs all over the country, and we need your help filling them. So if you would like to spend your summer in the mountains teaching kids how to rock climb, mountain bike, hike, kayak, backpack, and everything else you can imagine in places like California, Colorado, the Northeast, the Pacific Northwest, be out in the mountains, be out in the woods, be out on the water. If that's how you want to spend your summer and you want to make some money and you want to have access to healthcare and you want to work at one of Outside Magazine's best places to work, then you need to apply for one of these jobs with Avid4 Adventure. All you got to do is go to avid4.com/jobs. The application is only 5 minutes, and even if you don't think it's a good fit for you, I promise that you know somebody who could fill one of these hundreds of roles that we need to fill this year. Again, that's avid4.com/jobs. Fill out the 5-minute application and tell them you heard about it through Adventure Sports Podcast. Let's go have the best summer of your life. A lot of you know that I work in the brewing industry, specifically non-alcoholic craft beer with Athletic Brewing. And one of the cool things about it is we can ship our beer through the mail. And you typically can't do that with alcoholic drinks until now. Introducing Drizzly, the most convenient and easy way to get beer, wine, and spirits delivered to your front door in under 60 minutes. It is the #1 app for alcohol delivery. So whether you're planning a big party, you're in the middle of a recipe, you've got kids you're watching, whatever reason, you can't leave the house, you don't feel like going anywhere, you want to stay on the couch, either download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com and you can browse tons of different selections of beer, wine, and spirits and get it delivered, like I said, right to your front door in under an hour. I often pick up a pack of non-alcoholic beer and, maybe some beer I haven't been able to try. So if you want to give it a shot, download the app or go to drizzly.com. Use the code FAST5 for $5 off your very first order. And let them know you heard about it on the Adventure Sports Podcast.
Don't sleep on the newest innovations in wellness, or maybe do. Introducing Force Factor's Somnipure. Only at the Vitamin Shop, the new Somnipure line of drug-free sleep aids includes a muscle recovery formula to help you relieve sore muscles and improve sleep quality. Plus, for the first time ever at the Vitamin Shop, an easy-to-drink, fast-acting liquid solution with melatonin and natural botanicals to help you fall asleep faster, stay asleep longer, and wake up feeling refreshed. Sleep stronger with Somnipure at VitaminShop.com or the Vitamin Shop store near you.
That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode.
The need is only growing, and I think as a result of not just screens, and not just COVID, but those two things plus, just other things that have exploded in some interesting ways over the last 20 years with our media sources, particularly social media. I think not only I would add one more increasing rate. I mentioned some healthy statistics around increasing diabetes and obesity rates in kids. The other just alarming thing that we've seen over the last decade really is just increasing stress, anxiety, and depression rates, even in the youngest age of kids. So I feel like what we do at Avid, getting folks away from those social media sources, away from screens, into empowering, just confidence building environments like climbing and mountain biking and paddling environments. Hopefully we can really start curbing those rates around stress and anxiety as well.
The outdoor industry has changed so much in the last 2 decades. Have you seen the opportunities like this, not just what Avid's doing, but other organizations pop up trying to meet this need?
Absolutely. And I think in a really good way, the outdoor industry is a collaborative space. And there's a lot of examples of this from really wonderful conferences that folks come together with, and also just daily interactions that I have with a bunch of other organizations, some that have been around for a long time. And I agree with you, Mason, a lot that have started over the last 5 to 10 years. And, as a bigger player in that industry, I feel that our role at Avid4 Adventure is 100% to be of supportive for other folks just doing great programming. And there's a lot of overlapping programming purposely, and then there's a lot of specialization. So there are programs out there that just specialize in, for example, adaptive climbing or biking or paddling for folks with more physical needs. There are folks that specialize in just programs that were for kids and adults who identify as female. There's so many unique subsets of great work happening out there.
That is awesome. Gosh. Well, take us through what a typical is there a typical Avid4 Adventure experience? Is it, micro, is it trips? Is it extended camps? What are the programs?
Yeah, there's 3 main buckets or styles of programs. There's a little bit of variation within them, but 3 main buckets. The first bucket is day camps. So these are for mostly kids aged 4 to 12. So from pre-K to 7th grade about. So those day camps are Monday through Friday. Parents drop off at 9 o'clock, pick up at 3 o'clock. There's some extended time there. And we have 1 week and 2 week day camp options. That's bucket 1. And those we do day camps in all 8 state locations. Have about over 30 locations of day camp locations across those 8 states. And then bucket 2 is what we call resident camp. And this is, Mason, think about classic sleepaway camp, right? So beautiful cabins up in the mountains. There's 1 and 2 week options for resident camp. And you're staying in cabins, there's dining hall, like all of the core sport activities that I mentioned, the hiking and biking, paddling, rock climbing. And then there's also excursions away. So maybe a small rafting trip or a small backpacking trip from a resident camp. And then option 3 for style of programming are our expeditions. And these expeditions are 7 or 10 day, typically 7 or 10 day camping trips. But most of them are car camping. So think like 13 kids, 2 instructors, adult instructors from Avid. You got a van and a trailer, and you set up a base camp for your own expedition, and then you go do those core sports, but from a camping location that you're coming back to, and really taking care of yourselves as a group for that whole week or 10 days. And then we do have some backpacking expeditions. Same idea, but those folks are, instead of coming back to their car and base camp, kitchen and such, they're on the trail moving each day. So day camps, resident camps, and expedition camps are our 3 main styles of programming that we offer.
That is awesome.
It's a lot. I know it's a lot going on. I mean, it's really interesting, right. My first job after being at ski bum, my first job truly in like the outdoor education and adventure education field was with adults, and as a kind of running week-long adventure vacations for adults and some families. And I did that work with several companies on and off for years. And then, still over my career, I've balanced working with adults and working with kids. And there are pros and cons to both, but I so much prefer, I think there's a lot more fulfillment working with kids than working with adults.
Can you tell us a story about something you saw, like just an example of a kid whose life was changed because of this? Maybe, over the course of 20 years, I'm sure you have dozens and dozens, but is there one you could illustrate the importance of what Avid4 Adventure does in a story?
Yeah, and there are dozens, if not hundreds. So, idea for a separate podcast, just stories of empowerment from kids in the outdoors. You should make that happen, Mason. But I will tell you one quick example here. I was working for an organization where we did longer expeditions. So 25, 30-day multi-environment expeditions. And one particular, I worked for this company for a number of years, they ran a bunch of different styles of expeditions. One trip that I was running, which was an extended kayaking, moving water kayaking trip down the Green River in Utah. And, not big rapids, but like class 2, 3 rapids, if that makes sense for your listeners. Multi-day environment, incredibly beautiful environment. Well, basically for that expedition, the kids would show up at our base camp. We had a couple days of prep. And then 3 days later, basically, we would head out and put on the Green River. So one of the students who was coming from very urban Los Angeles, California area, came on the trip, and she had come through a scholarshiping program for this trip. And I found out on day one at the base camp there that she couldn't swim. And, clearly I'd never gone paddling either. And really was frozen in terror of like, I'm going home tomorrow. I cannot do this. And we worked for 3 days on the pond that was on property, just getting her, instead of in a kayak, just in a ducky, a little bit of safer craft, and getting her just comfortable with water. And unbelievably, she went down a seven night trip down the Green River through a couple of rapids. And I so clearly, like the takeout, remember her at the takeout and just hugging her peers and crying. And it was the hardest challenge she's ever faced and biggest thing that she's overcome in her life, which is just so transferable to life back in inner city Los Angeles.
Wow. And like you said, there's got to be hundreds of examples like that. Obviously a lot of these kids, maybe like her, maybe they'll never do this again. Why
Sure.
is it important that they do this, even if it's just one time?
Yeah, we talk a lot at Avid about positive risk taking, and for me, stepping into a positive risk taking environment is the reason that, even if it's one time, the most important reason that kids do something like this at Avid and beyond. And I'll expand on that a little bit more. It's not important for a kid to become a mountain biker, or become a rock climber, or paddler, or backpacker. But in these environments where kids are able to really have in front of them some natural consequences and true risk, and be able to look and assess the risk. So we work with kids in a unique way at Avid4 Adventure, where as an environment changes, we stop the whole group and kids get to look around, and we say, hey, what's changing about this environment? What could be a risk? Do we want to lean into that risk or not? And if yes, like, what's a rule that you want to make for yourself? Like one rule to, reduce some of the risk in that environment. So people get the muscle memory of practicing that as they're going down a trail on their bike, or as they come to a fork in the road on their hike, whatever that is. They're able to assess their environments, understand the risk a little bit, and then maybe make a rule for themselves if they want to keep going forward. And just like anything else, practicing those risk management muscles, you need to work them out in order to use them in the future. So that was a long intro to this. And this is what I think about, of like the real reason why we do this is, say that kid who has had time practice positive risk taking as a 6-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 10-year-old. Now all of a sudden they're a 13-year-old, and they, for the first time in their life, they show up to a friend's house where there's a bunch of kids, there's a party happening, there's no adults there, and there's alcohol. And it's the first time in their life. And now all of a sudden their brain kicks into action. It's a new environment. So they look around their environment without them even knowing it. They're thinking, what's changing about my environment? No adults, alcohol. What are some of the things that could go wrong? Well, there's a whole bunch of things that could go wrong. And then so they're able to maybe make a rule for themselves to keep themselves, to reduce the risk a little bit in that situation. So the risk management, positive risk taking is so useful and transferable to everyday life as these kiddos are becoming older kids and then young adults.
I see it in my personal life. I try to go out on a trip at least every other month with friends and invite as many as people as possible. And it doesn't take many of these experiences to completely change your life. You know what I mean? Like one or two of these amazing adventures can just change the trajectory enough so that 10, 15 years down the road, your life looks totally different. It doesn't take, it's like a big of enough swing from the hammer to move the needle a little bit, so that in time you see a huge difference. And I think what you're doing, especially those extended trips where it's, 7 to 10 days, holy cow, you can be a different person on the other side of that.
Yeah, and you bring up such a great point there, Mason, that I think sometimes when people think of outdoor adventure, they think of Mount Everest or you're rafting down the Grand Canyon, where someone can have just as powerful and life-changing experience by seeing a sunrise for the first time on top of a mountain, and not even a mountain, on top of a little hill, just a little bit from their house. So the outdoors is so powerful, and it just takes small experiences to really be impactful and pivotal in folks' lives.
Absolutely. And you start seeing things through a new light. I just had one of the best trips of my life, believe it or not, near Orlando, Florida, out in the swamp, and it was unreal. So yeah, it can be adventures everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. You just got to learn to look at life that way.
Yeah, and a lot of Avid4 Adventure, most of what we do are day camps, and all of those day camps are located in urban areas. When I look across the 8 states where we operate, it's Chicago and Minneapolis, Denver, Seattle, Boston, all of these locations where we do drive to nearby spots to go climbing and biking and paddling with the kids, but they're all within 20-30 minutes hopefully of where the camp is. So you can really find empowerment, confidence, and pretty cool outdoor spaces, even in those urban areas.
So as the chief empowerment officer, do you still get to go out on some trips with kids, or is it mostly, behind the desk now?
Too much behind the desk for sure. But in the summer it's interesting. The summer is my slower time because in the summer, that's when we have over 800 folks working for us, right? And really, my job in the summer is really to show up and be with staff a lot. So I show up at our different trip locations and camp locations, for sure, hang out with the kids, talk with parents, and just really try to connect with staff. It is few and far between a little bit, although I love the opportunities to do so. But few and far between that where I'm really leading a trip or leading a day of camp or something like that. I try to sneak it in every now and then.
Do you try and do anything personally throughout the year?
Yeah, absolutely. And, one of the things that I have done that's personal and also a connecting thing for camp and staff at Avid4 Adventure is on a few different ways during the summer. I love bike touring and bike packing. So, a few years back, I biked to all of our Colorado camp locations. So camping in between and just like connecting the dots. And then a few years ago, when we were just in Colorado, California, and Oregon, I biked to all of our West Coast locations. So I connected the dots between all of our Oregon camps and our Bay Area, California camps, and biked in between. So finding ways to mix personal adventure and some work at Avid, that's really a home run for me.
Holy cow. I mean, that's not like overnight stuff. You're taking some time to get that done. Having to maintain, running an organization on top of that. That's not easy.
Yeah, but with the beauty of our world, we've talked a lot about the negative effects of technology and the positive effects that I really can, keep connection with the headquartered office and my colleagues there, while on a trip like that was, camping and remote and beautiful and weather, like I had to deal with a lot of weather and was in cell phone coverage pretty much that whole time of that trip. So I was able to really grasp the best of a couple of worlds there.
You mentioned staff before, and right now you're actually hiring. Can you talk a little bit about what you're looking for and what kind of people who might be looking for something to do this summer, maybe the term that you typically want commitment for, and who can apply?
Yeah, you bet. I promise, Mason, I'll get to some of those details, but I did want to preface a little bit just around staff that it's one of the things that I am actually most proud of about Avid is that we have really removed the barriers to enter the outdoor industry that have been there really forever. I think back to when I was breaking into the outdoor industry, first thing I had to go do is go get a couple of certifications that cost me probably all in about $1,000 and took a bunch of time before I was even eligible to apply for the job a job in the outdoor industry. And that's still true with a lot of jobs in the outdoor industry right now. With Avid, because we have so many types of programs across so many locations, and we work with such a wide variety of ages of kids from 4 years old to 17 years old. Really, your first question, what are we looking for? We want folks who want to work in the outdoors and want to work with kids, and truly want to feel that empowerment and that fulfillment of just working in the outdoors, what we've been talking about. And that's it, like, period. If you want to work with kids and you really want to dive into work in the outdoors, we can find a job for you, and we will in-house train you and pay for that training for any risk management skills that you need, any communication skills that you need, across all of the core sports, and then provide you with the right training and the right placement to really either start your career in the outdoors, or, don't get me wrong, Mason, like, we also need highly technical rock climbers to be our lead climbers, and we need technical whitewater boaters. So we have jobs for folks that are starting their careers in the outdoors, or folks that are really stepping into leadership positions and expanding their career in the outdoors. And we also have removed questions like, some people need housing for the summer, and great, come work at one of our overnight camp programs. It includes housing and food. And we have other folks who maybe have started a family, and they really need to be home in the evenings and the weekends, but want to have this fulfilling experience. And we have, so many locations of day camp, so we can provide that. So we really meet people where they are and can find a really good placement for them.
That was actually one of my questions was, people who may find their love of adventure a little later in life and don't know necessarily where to get involved. Maybe they're, high up in a company that isn't at all focused on this, or maybe they are like me, two young kids, have a career, and they want to do more in this space. What does either Avid have, or what advice do you have for folks who want to help contribute to this problem and contribute to adventure for all?
I mean, I think they can do, I say yes, they could do it all. They could do whatever they want. And it is true. A lot of our instructors, the average age of our instructors is 24 to 26, so in that mid-20 range. And we have instructors in their 60s and 70s as well. So at least at Avid4 Adventure, we really, because of the diversity of programs that we have, we can find the right fit. And really, one of the things that, as I reflect on my life of growing up in the East Coast and playing soccer and lacrosse and then moving into adventure sports, one of the things that's just like so wonderful about climbing and biking and paddling as opposed to soccer is that, wow, if I tried to play a soccer game right now, I would hurt myself. It is just harder and harder to do as you get older. But these relatively low impact environments, and individual sports, it's really, you can do them in just as good, if not better ways as you age and get a little wiser and more experience. So I would say for folks that are looking for a change in their life, or just an addition to their life in these really challenging times, working in the outdoors and working at Avid could be a really great fit.
I know we've been talking a lot about like the problems with the world and the issue of kids and adventure and the kids in the outdoor only increasing. What does give you hope about the future of kids and kind of the next generation being supporters and involved in the outdoors?
I think what I see, and I know, as you just mentioned, we've talked about too much screen time, and there's too much stress, and there's too much anxiety in the young folks and really in all of our lives right now. And it can be quite depressing and hopeless if you think about all of that. And what the first thing that comes to mind when I hear your question of like, what is something that this younger generation really has that's maybe even better than the rest of us. And it is interesting. I actually think they have hope, and they have like folks that are just so engaged and so caring and empathetic right now. I feel like the kids that we see at Avid, they in a more better way than when I was a kid and in subsequent generations, I feel like they want to do good. And when I think about environmental causes and just the conversations around climate change and the conversations around justice and diversity and inclusion, there is just so much engagement and so much hope. And I feel like that is being driven from a younger population. And so that gives me the hope that other folks have, and the desire to engage and care and bring empathy to conversations like that really gives me hope.
Is there any other major theme that you have learned from these students that come in that maybe have no idea what they're doing in the outdoors, but they teach you something in return? Could be a common theme. Example is on this show, almost every adventurer, especially a world traveler, constantly, every single time, almost pretty much without fail, is a reminder of how good the world actually is versus, what we hear and read about every day. They say that the in-person interactions are amazing, and 99% of the world out there is wants to be your friend and wants to be friendly and wants to help.
Right on. That's such a great theme. Now I want to use that one now, Mason, but now I can't. You already used that one. No, but the thing that comes to mind, and I don't know if it's a learning, but it's a constant reminder working in the outdoors and working with kids. It's just the power of laughter and fun and joy, and just like pure joy. And that is it's just so easy to come up when you're doing pretty darn cool things, being in the outdoors, and particularly working with kids, is that joy that just gets injected into your life, and where there's the full body laughter and just the unbridled fun.
Well, Paul, this is so cool, man, and congrats on everything you're doing. Now, did you want to talk any more about what you're looking for this summer and how folks can get involved?
Yeah, no, thanks for circling back there. We are, as you mentioned, we have jobs available right now, and it is in this challenging and just crazily continued uncertain time that we're all living in right now. Working in the outdoors and working with kids, it just really does inject that fun that I said, but also just provide this certainty and a safe outdoor space and a fulfillment that's really unparalleled. And so folks should apply if this sounds good for them. They should just go to our website, which is Avid4 AVID and then the number 4.com, avid4.com. And then all the information is right there. More information about jobs, the different locations, the compensation that we pay. We pay, minimum living wage at all locations, and then upward from there based on skills and certifications. And then you can just apply online, right there online. It's really easy to apply, and a member of our team would reach back out to you within a day or two to take next steps from there. 800
people. That's that's a lot of people, man. Is this your biggest year ever of the amount of people you got to get?
It is, yeah. As I said, we have grown every year of existence with Avid, except for when COVID hit in 2020, and that we will continue that. There's more and more kids, so there's more and more work to do, Mason.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, geez, I love what you're doing. Such a cool thing.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks for your work, Mason. We'll talk
Have a good one. We'll talk soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye. First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to the show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to grow in the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.
If you send money to your loved ones internationally, do it with the Western Union app. Once you've downloaded it, you can send money around the world or back home in just a few taps, so family and friends can pick up cash fast. Download the Western Union app and send money today. Western Union. Fast, easy, reliable. Offered by Western Union Financial Services, Inc., NMLS 906983, or Western Union International Services, LLC, NMLS 906985. Terms apply.
This podcast is brought to you by Paper, Tutors for All. When students struggle at school, finding a tutor can make a real difference. But tutors are expensive and most families can't afford one. What if that changed? What if tutoring was affordable? What if it was free? What if it was available 24/7 in multiple languages? Now it is. With Paper, schools can offer every single student free 24/7 access to tutoring. Visit paper.co to find out if your child has access to Paper today.